I'm Jaron Small. I'm based here in Houston, Texas. I'm 30 years old. I'm the founder and CEO of Legends Do Live, which is a Houston-based nonprofit where our mission is to fund and equip disadvantaged youth and communities through workshop programs and events. So in short, we kind of bring back cool things and resources back to schools that get cut, whether it be funding or programming in an interactive way that kids want to engage with, and also the teachers. So with that, we were doing this for about 7 years. I was that kid in high school that was struggling with standardized testing, was playing basketball, but my senior year, I didn't know where I was going because I was struggling with math at the time. And I ended up passing that test by 1 point and ended up going to Prairie View University, which is a university here in Texas, where I became the student body president within 2 years. So I went from a kid that couldn't even get into school to running one. So I understood quickly how sometimes these things, especially like with standardized testing, can be very mentally challenging for students, and how you think you can't really progress to the next level or you're not good enough. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I can get to those kids quicker and earlier and engage them and make sure that it's fun and interactive. So one of the things that we saw doing all of our events that we've done was just how people were just reading at a really low rate, and it was just kind of scary. And I'm just like, this is not good. And I remember one summer I was working at PV, and I was watching. I don't know if you guys listen to the Migos, but I was watching a radio interview of them, and they make them read a Dr. Seuss book, but they have to rap it. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is a real thing that I don't think we know that we be doing subconsciously every day. That has a lot of figure language, sentence structure, grammars, all types of things. So I partnered with some teachers locally here in Houston, and we created our program called Reading with a Rapper, where we teach kids how to read and write through rap, lyrics, content, and tech. But you can go to the next slide. All right, so here's our mission. Reading and Rapper was created to relate ELA academics with socially conscious lyrics, video content, and technology. Through this platform, we can relate and uplift our youth socially and academically to skills necessary to thrive in the secondary and collegiate level courses. So if you play that video, Spud, they can kind of get a glimpse of what it is, and we go from there.
So, this is the culture. Yeah. No, we don't know you. No. We make it bounce. Bounce. We make it know you. Yeah. What's in my cup? Cup. No, it ain't Folgers. No. But we stay woke. Woke. Don't sleep on the culture.
My name is Alade. I go to Alright. I really like Reading with the Rapper. It's really entertaining and gets everybody engaged with what's going on. I would definitely prefer this over any regular class any day.
My name is Nehemiah Richardson, and I go to Albright Middle School. One thing I liked about the presentation was the headphones, how we got to sample the music, and it was just cool all around. I like to do it again.
It's hard to pronounce, but you better say it right or we calling you out. You ain't gang, then we calling you out. Don't act foul or we calling you out.
Okay, cool. So here's some hard statistics that we saw that made us want to do this, right? 21% read it below a fifth grade level. 65% of the fourth graders read at a basic school level. And the daunting one, the really hard one for us was like 85% of the kids that are in the juvenile or interface with the juvenile court system are functionally illiterate. So that literally means that their decision-making skills are low because of comprehending. And comprehending comes from knowing how to read at a certain level. So if they will be able to learn how to read and make better decision-making skills, they probably wouldn't end up in juvenile, which means they probably would end up in jail, which probably means they probably would end up in prison. So the school to prison pipeline gets cut in half or dramatically just because of great decision-making skills that kids can go through at an early age. And then, of course, according to the U.S. Department of Education, 32 million Americans, adults, cannot read, right? And that's scary because it's this thing that's key. It's not slowing down, and it's continuing to keep growing. So when we say bring culture to the classroom, we really mean that. So when kids are listening to music, we give them headphones because you tend to focus more when you have headphones on. And when you're reading something that you're listening to at the same time, you're gonna get it quicker. We know in the technology and information age, so we kind of didn't deviate away from paper and pen, but we kind of gave it to them in a new way with Surface Pros. So those are digital books, paper and pen that you use with the stylus and the paper that you can write on the screen with. So it makes it a little more easy for them to navigate through the lesson plan, through how we have it on the computer. And then the lights. We know lights dictate moods. So we know that at the end of the day, if you walk into a room based off of color, we can dictate the mood you're going to be in, or we want you to be in, or have a conversation around that. And so when you put all this together, what we're pretty much saying is not so much about how we're teaching kids. What we're teaching kids is about how we're giving them the information. They're literally learning on a different frequency, but we're still trying to give them old dinosaur ways of education when they're 21st century students. We have to meet them where they are. They're heavy on content on their phones, music, videos. So let's bring that in together to create something that where they can digest over time. All right, here's a picture of just what we did briefly. In the bottom corner is what we did with the mayor. We turned City Hall into a classroom. So we kind of do pop-ups to kind of show a lot of the decision makers what the actual program is, because ultimately if we can change adults' mind and make them feel like they're having fun, they're included in the process, we know that the kids are going to be impacted, because ultimately the kids are going to say yes, but we know the adults are the one that actually pretty much. So we've done pop-ups all over the city. We're in 3 cities actually, here, Atlanta, and New Orleans. And we launched this in summer of 2018. And just about now, we're close to around 30,000 students that we've impacted with this program in starting this. You can see to the right of that, we had a picture with Meek Mill. He actually came, and the beauty of the program is that the artist that you're studying for 8 weeks is actually going to come surprise you at the end of the 8 weeks to come talk about that lesson, that song specifically, what it meant to them, the album, and give them a perspective on why they wrote the song, which really doesn't often happen because it's kind of much depicted by other groups of people versus the person that actually wrote it. So I treat the artist as an author. It's like an audio book, right? An album's an audio book, and they're expressing themselves through that book of their songs. So here's the 8-week program, and this is how it's broken down. It's broken down in 8 weeks, and we have it broken down like an album. So the first 2 weeks are going to be the introduction. The first week is the introduction. They come in, write an open essay about who they are. We just want to see, can they express themselves and what are their issues within the ELA diaspora. And then once we get that, it might be figure language. For 2 weeks, we have problem tracks. And so now we pick an album that they will go through that kind of fits kind of what they've been talking about, and they have to express themselves and write an essay again through the problem track. So we focus on showing them figure language through those songs and breaking it down. And then we interlude into the social tracks. What is the song talking about? The content. How does that make you feel? Is that something that's correlating with you every day? That may be the reason why you're not coming to school, why you're getting truancies, why you're not reading. Let's figure that out and give you a chance to express yourself. So after every 2 weeks of tracks, they have to come back and rewrite their essay. So now we're seeing growth within these weeks and seeing, like, okay, when we first got them in week 1, they were at a 1. By week 4, they're at a 7 because of just how we gave and addressed the information to them. And so at the very end, they think they have to pretty much write their essay or their song and deliver it in front of like the principal and the decision makers and whatnot. But at the very end, if they've been studying Drake for 7 weeks, the experience comes in where Drake actually comes to surprise them. They have no clue that he's coming, and he would literally like come teach a class and talk about the album and break it down, why he uses figure language, why it's important for them to read, why he reads, what does he like to read. Just encouraging more and more students to do this, because we started this program as early as 3rd, 4th grade, going all the way to 12th, and we're looking at going into collegiate space as well, because we know sometimes that flow of students that's coming in, incoming freshmen, still have a little bit of issues with the literacy component. And so now, even because of COVID, we had to go into another realm of digital. So we created a Read and Rap digital side, where now instead of it being an 8-week program, it's a 4-week program, twice a week for 4 weeks, where they would do it online in the same metrics, but it would be through Google Classroom, and they would have preloaded videos, preloaded songs. And then, of course, when the artist comes in to surprise them, that would be a pre-recorded or a live session that would be done, scheduled in for the students as well. So again, we found both ways to be very engaging and intriguing to students, but we know that the in-person is like really the biggest thing. And the thing that I learned was we got a partnership with Microsoft to get them to start doing the technology side, because we thought, okay, let's take this. We know this program is going to be living in underserved communities. And ultimately, we know that underserved communities don't have access to Wi-Fi, computers, or technology. So when we were going to these schools, I knew that Microsoft would be interested in helping these areas because that's one of their mission statements, but they don't know where these are at. So we're really killing 2 birds with 1 stone with this as well. With the program, when it is acquired to that school, we're paying teachers extra. We train a teacher for that school to do the program. We train them, we pay them, we give them all the supplies, right? So literally, they're literally walking into a new classroom, essentially, and how school should look in our heads and it should process be. And school should be fun. It shouldn't be where you thinking you getting up, you like, I don't know if I want to go to school today. I remember when I was in high school, I looked forward to going to school because it was fun. It was engaging. Yes, my friends were there, but my teachers were fun. They engaged, and the lessons we had were engaging. And it made me want to be active and go into doing it. And I think we kind of gotten away from that. And even when you look at, the last couple of years, these mass school shootings, there's nothing really positive happening in school. We really haven't heard anything positive about education in a minute in America. So which is crazy because that's the foundation piece for all of us. No matter what we're doing, whether we're a coach, whether we're a student president in our college, you went through matriculation in school. The president of the United States to the senator to the board member at a company, the CEO, they all had education at some point. So for the foundation not to be set to where there's continued growth and involvement, I think it's kind of, it's crazy essentially. But I think ultimately when we saw pop culture was in everything but school, right? Pop culture is in politics, it's in fashion, it's in business, it's in everything else but education. And I don't know why, but ultimately when we do this, it clicks so fast to these kids. We literally have introduced this program to kids that don't speak too much English or speak a different language from a different country. And because of the music and the vibrations and the energy that brings, they automatically get it. And so now we know that we can possibly teach kids to learn how to write, to read, and possibly a different language through music and culture, because it's something that we all naturally gravitate to as human beings. It's a part of our DNA. So I think we should just all, ultimately run this course together and make it happen. And strategically for us to get to these avenues to where we impacted these 30 kids, we did a tour here in Houston where we went to schools and did these pop-ups that were pretty much like an hour and 30, just to show students. We were asked to get the most, I guess you say, problematic or repeat testers to be in one area. And we would invite the principal, the ELA specialist, and any people from the district to come to do a watch. And they would just see how these kids would like night and day within 30 minutes. They was like, okay, how y'all getting them to sit down, be quiet, listen, be engaged? There's no one talking because they're listening, they're thinking, and we're pushing their minds in a way that they can process and understand it. And so we did that for a year, and ultimately, right before COVID, we were finishing up one district here in Houston. We just finished up 9 middle schools here in Houston. They actually had the full program outright, and they saw tremendous growth within a semester just because of how we gave them the information and what we were doing with it. And granted, all the teachers were young, and I'm not an educator. I just feel like I'm a culture engineer that can come in because it's important for, if we want to try to tackle the culture in that community, we have to have people that's in that space that look like them, that can talk to them, that understand their lingo, and can speak to them in a real manner. We don't have to be fake, because one thing about students in today's time, everyone knows real from fake. And so once they identify that you're not being genuine, then they disconnect. So we have to make sure that we're being very genuine with what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that was my strategic method of how I did that and got to where we am. And that spawned into going into New Orleans when we did 2 charter schools at one time. And then that spun going into Atlanta, where it's like the mecca of hip hop. And I knew strategically, if I can get to where all the hip hop is at and do just one school there, then it will just latch on and catch on fire. Next slide. So like we did 30,000 students between Houston, New Orleans, and Atlanta. Some of the partners that we've been able to work with over the last 2 years is Rock Nation, Microsoft, My Brother's Keeper, the City of Houston, Puma, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and Atlanta Records. So it's a totality of showing that all these different agencies or companies can come together to impact education, which I feel like ultimately, if the state or the local level is cutting funds, we should stop asking that group of people for funds if they're cutting it. Let's go to another source that wants to impact and engage with this demographic, but create a balance to it. They're not really doing too much where they have control, but essentially we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as humans. Like we're impacting these students for the next phase and giving them things they need to be successful in a creative way. So that's it. We're going to try to do a game called the Figurative Language Challenge, where we bring out 4 songs that are popular that people know, and they have to identify a faded language in each one of those songs. So we're going to play Drake's Nonstop, and I would want somebody to type in the chat what they think the metaphor is. Okay, so who can tell me what the metaphor is? This is a rolling, not a stopwatch. You don't never stop. Yes, that is the metaphor. And why is it a metaphor?
That's me.
Ben, why is it a metaphor?
Because you're comparing two different things. You're comparing a Rolex to a stopwatch, and they're separate objects, but you're relating them to each other.
And we're not using what? What two words?
You're not using like or as.
Exactly, right? And so imagine in a kid, they was like, wait, I listen to this music every day, and I had no clue, but there was a metaphor right there in front of my face. So if you have a Rolex watch, I don't think any of us do. If we do, you are amazing. But they do not tick. They just go in a circle. They don't actually move like an actual watch, like a stopwatch. So that is the metaphor.